Okay, so this is my first time kind of recording a lab with this new desktop recording software, so bear with me if I make a few mistakes and have to pause now and then, but let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be doing the Chapter 1 exercise/lab in mapping with ArcGIS Pro, and it starts on page 14. So let's see, just to start with, they ask us to sign in and open up ArcPro. Right now I have it as a button on my tab at the bottom of the screen, which I don't think you can see, but it's already installed. I'm opening it. And of course you get to see how slow my computer runs now and then, as I'm sure everybody else's will. Especially if you use a home computer, they don't have quite as much juice as our school computers. Real time, folks. Woohoo! All right. So I'm going to expand this. So this says to create a new project. Also, I just want to point in, it says I'm not signed in. So let's sign in here. I'm going to make sure you're signed in to your ArcGIS Online account, because that's going to enable you to access the data that it asks you to pull from off ArcGIS Online and on the internet. Okay, so I'm signed in. There's my profile. You can see I've actually started a number of these projects, but we're going to go ahead and pretend like I haven't. So we're going to choose the Map APTX template. Basically, we're going to go under blank templates, click on Map, and it says let's make sure to give it a descriptive name. So you'll want to be able to tell us what it is just by looking at the file name. And this is asking us to call it population density for marketing report. Okay. And we're just going to store it in a folder for our ArcGIS projects. I personally am saving it in for myself, and we talked about this. I talked about this last week a bit, which is making sure where you put your files is someplace consistent. I have mine. I have a cartography file on my desktop, and I'm putting it under data and lab work, and this is Chapter 1 lab. And since I've done this before, I'm going to actually put a 1 after it. Actually, I've done this a couple times. I'm going to put a 2 after it so I can identify it. And it also says to leave the checkbox checked to create a new folder for this map project. So I did that and press OK. Create the project. Opening new map. Loading map, okay. So it's opening up a default base map. Okay, so this looks pretty much like the picture in the book on page 15. So let's start off with, at the bottom of page 15, we're going to find your state data with population density. So it says, luckily ArcGIS Online's Living Atlas that you learned about earlier has the data you need. So to find it, go to the catalog pane on the right and click portal. So these are called panes, all these squares. And on the right, we have these little tabs at the bottom and the word catalogs. If you click on that, up here we see the word portal. That's going to connect us to the internet. It says to look for the little cloud icon, green book on a cloud icon. So we're going to click on that, and that takes us to Living Atlas. Living Atlas, this means it's connected directly to ArcGIS Online. If you were to go on to ArcGIS Online, you would also find the exact same thing called Living Atlas. So you will see an item called the USA States Generalized. So we need to actually do a search for that. So I type USA States, enter, and we want to do the generalized. Right click, add to current map. And there it goes. It pops over on the left in the contents pane at the very top of the drawing order. So as it says on page 116, this will bring the data into the maps table of contents. You will need to expand the USA States Generalized layer and right-click the USA States Generalized item and select Attribute Table. So these are all very essential functions and workflows that'll become second nature. The whole right click and opening up this drop down menu, and finding the things that work out the most right now are attribute table and properties. So it says to click on the attribute table. And the attribute table, for those who are still new to GIS, is the table that contains data about the geospatial information. The geospatial information being the coordinates, or the location of each of these states. And the attribute data is everything else that describes the demographics in this case. So we have population, we have ethnicity, we have gender and age group. So it's all stored in those different shape files, in this case polygons for the state shapes. So it says on page 16, after looking at the fields, we can see a field called pop10 _ square mile. This is going to give us the data, the per square mile data that we want to use. It's also from 2010, I should note, that's why the 10 is there. So now we just need to symbolize the states using a single color ramp. To do this, you click the right click USA States Generalized, and then click on Symbology. Just an FYI, we can actually close this attribute table. We can easily open it back up just by right-clicking the layer name, but for now I'm going to close it because it's just getting in the way. So it says to right-click and go to Symbology. You can do it this way, but it's also worth noting that I didn't have to do that. Over on the right where we clicked on Catalog, those lower tabs, there's actually the Symbology tab. It's just always there. So you can just go over and click on that. The pane on the right will show you the symbology properties of the layer as seen in the following screenshot. So we pretty much have that same thing there. Moving on to page 17, click in the drop-down where it says single symbol and change it to graduated colors. Graduated colors. There we go. Also just going to sort of give you a few orientation tips as we move through. There's a lot of this interface that looks, as you will see when we move on to ArcGIS Online a little more, looks a lot like ArcGIS Online. So what ArcPro is doing is it's really fusing together ArcGIS Online and the desktop version, just for those if you're curious. So you will see the map change and that you now have new settings in the symbology properties. So immediately when I open up graduated colors, it set the available data to the default color scheme. As you can see, it's that color ramp from yellow to orange. And it says on number 4, since you want to show the population density, you should change the drop-down next to field to pop10 square mile. So right now where it says field, that field are those columns that we saw in the attribute table. So I'll open it up really quick just to show you. So all of these going down, these are fields. Okay. And these are all of these fields will be available to choose in these drop-down menus here. Okay, so we're going to choose pop10 square miles since we want population density. Again, I'm going to close the attribute table. You have put data into a map, but right now the map isn't put into a layout. Oh, I forgot, I skipped the part where it says choose your color ramp. You know, that's the most fun part, is choosing your color ramp. As we go through this class, you'll learn how important color choice is, and you'll get a sense of what you prefer. In this case, we're looking at, you can look down here and see the colors are referring to. The darker the color, the higher the population density. The lower the color, the lower the population density. And for some reason, my mouse is stopping moving, which means my computer's working on something. Okay. So as you can see, and we won't do this now, but you can actually change how these values are reflected. So if you really wanted actually to show more of one color and less of another, you could shift how the values are divided up. But that's a lesson for another time. But we can see here that most of the country is this yellow, the lowest symbol, which has less than 107.4 people per square mile. Okay. So I'll just pick another one just so you can see what it looks like on a different color scheme. So there's like a light blue to purple color scheme. So to create a layout, we're going to move on and create a layout from this now. Right now we're just in a map frame view. This is the data view. where we do all of the work on how the data looks. How the data looks specifically, not the map. But now we're going to work on how the map would look. To create a layout, click Insert from the top of the ArcGIS Pro ribbon. ArcGIS Pro ribbon is this thing up here. It works a lot like Microsoft Word or just the Microsoft Office stuff. Insert at the top of the ArcGIS Pro ribbon. Insert, and we're going to do new layout, and it wants us to choose ANSI landscape letter. So it's opening the layout. That means it's kind of moving all of this data over into a different format, one that we can create as a cartographic product. So you'll see up here this shifted. We've got now have two tabs. So we have a blank layout. What I have learned, and what it does not say in this book, is that once you create this layout from your map, you actually have to click on it. Oh wait, no, whoops, I'm sorry. Scratch that. Okay, so now we want to insert the actual map that we have on the other tab, the data. So we go to map frame, click the little drop down button, and select the little icon that shows the map as we actually see it on the other tab. So it's this one here. So that's what I was going to say. Once you click that, it doesn't, for some reason, doesn't automatically show up. You actually have to press. I left clicked on the blank layout page, and now it shows up. Okay, so now we have it up here on the right. I'm going to center it a little bit. So one thing I've noticed in my version of ArcPro, it might be the same with yours. It doesn't say this in the textbook, but mine always goes into this little small map, which maybe it always does that, but it doesn't explicitly say it in the textbook. So we actually have to resize it, because certainly if we're creating a map layout like the one we see as the final product on 18, it's not this small, so we need to make it bigger. So in order to do that, we go to Element, again, on the right side pane, where you have Catalog and Symbology. We're going to try the third tab down there, which is Element. Okay, so under Element, we're on the map frame. The map frame just refers to this whole active map section we have here. So I'm going to see, if you hover over these little icons, and this goes with all of ArcPro, you'll always get the little title popping up. It's pretty implicit in all sort of Microsoft Office-like programs. So I'm going to move over to the second one, which is called Display Options. So we have our constraint. So a constraint is basically what you think it might be. Like, how are we actually keeping this data in line? How do we want its shape to change or not change? So right now it says none, but if you were to move this open, all you see it's actually opening up the view, but it's not changing the actual size of what we see there. So, or of the United States. So we want to get the United States bigger, not just what it's showing as far as the whole map goes. So in order to do that, we choose Fixed Extent. We click on the arrow next to it and choose Fixed Extent. So extent is, if you don't already know this, exactly what it is you're seeing. This is the extent of the map. So if we go over to here, over back to our Data tab where we show the map, the extent refers to what exactly we are seeing right now. So there is actually a command over at Map where you can go to... Okay, I had to pause there for a second. So as I was saying, we're back on the data view with the map that we're looking at. So I was explaining a bit about extent. If you go up to the Navigate section under Map, the Map tab, there's a little globe. It's not very clear, but it's a little globe. If you click on it, it takes you to the full extent. So this is the full extent of the map data that we have. And if we want to zoom in on the part that we're looking at more closely, you just roll. I'm rolling the wheel on the mouse forward to sort of zoom in here. Okay. So that's putting us back at the extent that we want to use. This is called the current extent. Okay. So let's go back to layout. And we're going to go back to element, going back to our constraint, fixed extent. So this extent is fixed. Okay, and then we have to select the layer that we want to activate. We're looking at the US states layer. Okay. It's important to choose the layer, else nothing will happen. So when we go over to our map,